Allah says that just one contradiction, error, or mistake will prove Islam is false. So here's 11 errors or contradictions in 5 minutes to prove Islam is false. Allah claims the Quran is a book fully explained. Allah claims the Quran explains everything. Allah says the Quran is perfect with each verse fully explained to the people, except for verses that only Allah can understand. That's a contradiction. If Allah can't make up his mind whether the Quran is clear or not, then this may explain the following. Allah says the only food in hell is a thorny plant. But Allah also says the only food in hell is discharge from wounds. That's a contradiction. Allah has the attribute of being self-sufficient. This means Allah is independent and requires no one. The attributes of Allah are eternal, uncreated characteristics or properties of Allah. An example of Allah's attribute is that he is the merciful. So Allah has the attribute of mercy. This is a really big problem because mercy is a transaction between two or more beings. To be merciful requires something to be merciful to. This means for Allah to express his attribute of mercy means he needs something else to exist. If nothing else exists, Allah cannot display his attribute of mercy. This makes Allah a dependent being, and that's a contradiction. Now, if Muslims want to say that because Allah is merciful means he is always merciful, so that mercy is always being expressed to his creation by Allah, then this is still a problem. Because before creation, when nothing existed, if Allah was always expressing mercy, then what was he being merciful to? The answer is nothing, which means Allah could not be displaying constant mercy before creation because mercy cannot be displayed if there is nothing to be merciful to. So Allah is dependent, or Islam is just illogical, or both. But it's a problem. This is a problem. Intercession is when person A pleads to a higher authority, person B, on behalf of person C. So if intercession is when someone pleads to a higher power on behalf of someone else, can Muslims explain why Allah says he will be an intercessor for the believer? For Allah to be an intercessor literally means Allah is subservient to a greater being than himself. So who is Allah interceding to? Whatever the answer, this is a problem. Allah says no one has seen what awaits them in heaven. Muhammad confirms no one has seen what Allah has prepared for them in heaven. And Aisha confirms Muhammad has never seen the unseen. So can Muslims explain why Muhammad says he saw what is in heaven? That's a contradiction. Allah says that no vision can see him. Aisha confirms that no one can see Allah and says Muhammad never saw him. So, can Muslims explain why Muhammad said he saw Allah? Twice. This is a contradiction. And there's lots of scholars confirming that Muhammad did see Allah. Allah says he created alcohol from the fruits of the grapevine and the date tree. Allah says alcohol is a sign of his greatness. Allah even says alcohol helps people make a good living. So after saying he made alcohol and it's a good thing, why does Allah then say alcohol is something made to harm humanity by Satan? That's a contradiction. In Islam, the straight path is the path of Islam. It is the path of faith laid out for believers by Allah. It is the path to knowledge, truth, and understanding because it is the path of faith. So, if the straight path is the path of religion to take you to Allah, how can Allah also be on that path? This is a huge mistake. What faith must Allah have to be saved? Who will save him? What path is so big even Allah must walk it? What guidance and knowledge is Allah seeking? If this is just a written error, then it will still prove Islam is false because it proves the Quran has mistakes in it. In Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, there's a story about Abraham being asked by God to sacrifice his son. Just before Abraham is about to kill his son, Allah tells him he doesn't need to kill him because he's made a ransom to spare his son's life with a great sacrifice. This is a problem because a ransom is to give something to someone who has an advantage over you in exchange for something else. So who is so powerful that they could have something over Allah that makes Allah have to pay them a ransom for them to do something Allah wants him to do? Once again, the Quran tells us something is as powerful as Allah. Or is it just a mistake? This problem can be shown again. For example, in Islam, only Allah is a creator of life. In Islam, humans are not creators of life. We are just a vehicle Allah uses to create life. In verse 2314, Allah talks about the creation of human life and points out that it is Him who creates life. Yet after boasting about how Allah creates life, He says He is the best of creators. This is a stunning mistake because the context demands Allah is referring to the creation of life, and therefore Allah is acknowledging that there are other creators of life, but He is just the best one. So once again, the only response by Muslims is that this is a linguistic or grammar error, but this will again prove the Quran has mistakes. Debunking Islam. So this is the problem. Finally, Allah says Muhammad only speaks words from him and does not speak from his own desires. Muhammad confirms that he only speaks what is from Allah and he speaks only good. So, can Muslims explain why Muhammad, after cursing a child for no reason, said he is just a man who may sometimes make mistakes and speak out of his own anger and error? That's a contradiction. That's 11 contradictions in 5 minutes, probably 7 minutes. Islam was just debunked.